Hello and welcome to Monster of the Week, the only show on the internet that thinks the Faustian deal gets a bad rap. Today, we are talking about one of the most interesting creatures from the Nine Hells you could ever cross paths with, the Harvester Devil. As always, we'll be going over this creature's publication history, lore, and ecology, taking a deep dive into everything there is to know. And then we're going to convert them into 5th edition D&D so you can use them in your current 5e campaign. I'm so excited to talk about this monster. They're weird, they're practical, they have a personality, and they pose larger questions about the overall cosmology of the multiverse, all of which are things I consider to be a massive benefit. So settle in, make sure you talk to your lawyer before signing any contracts, and get ready because we are taking a trip to the Nine Hells. Harvester Devils first appeared in 3rd edition D&D as part of the Fiendish Codex 2, Tyrants of the Nine Hells. This book, published in 2006, was meant to really flesh out the Nine Hells as a location for your Dungeons & Dragons adventures. As was the norm for most 3rd edition books of the time, this thing was chock full of all kinds of options for both players and DMs that were looking to get dragged to hell. There's also just a ton of really interesting game lore in this book, so if you're a lore nerd like me, chances are you probably are if you're watching this channel, and you can manage to get your hands on a copy, I highly recommend it. There's some interesting stuff in there. But I digress. We're here to talk about the Harvester Devil. Harvester Devils, or Falxugon if you're speaking Infernal, are very humanoid in their appearance. Aside from their goat feet, horns, and barbed tail, these guys tend to look like just about any other well-dressed charlatan. And that's something worth noting, is that these creatures are always dressed to the nines in beautiful garments, finery, and anything that they think makes them look cool. If it weren't for their Hellboy-esque features, they'd almost fit in with high society. So it's a good thing they can use magic to mask their true appearance. Unless this creature was encountered on its home plane in the Nine Hells somewhere, it's very unlikely anyone interacting with a Harvester Devil would have any idea that they were talking to a devilish creature. They do their utmost to come across as any other humanoid creature, at least while they're in public. In private, though, that's a whole different situation. As the name would suggest, these creatures are experts in the art of harvesting. And I'll give you one guess what they harvest. To a devil, there's no crop more important than souls. And the easiest way by far to collect mortal souls is simply to find creatures who are willing to give up their soul in exchange for something of value. Usually we're talking about wealth, power, or sometimes something very specifically valuable to the would-be soul seller. And the Harvester Devil is an expert at convincing mortals to make the ultimate trade. These cunning devils travel all over the material plane hatching schemes, schmoozing with nobility, and worming their way into society in order to acquire as many mortal souls as possible. Now, due to the lawful nature of devils, this is almost never a violent transaction. The Harvester Devil will simply find individuals it can tempt into making a deal, and once a deal is struck, the creature's soul is forfeit. But the Harvester Devil does also have to uphold its side of the bargain too. This isn't a genie wish situation, this is a business transaction between two consenting parties. It's all very corporate, and if you were to view the Nine Hells as a massive bureaucratic institution, which it definitely is, these guys would be like the entry-level salespeople that get you to sign your life away and then mail you a garage full of weight loss supplements. But this is all probably sounding pretty familiar. I feel like there are countless depictions of devils and fiends all across D&D and pop culture as a whole that showcase the shadowy businessman wearing a suit trying to convince some mortal to sell their soul in exchange for monetary gain.
I'm sure your reasons are terrific if you're willing to pay with your soul.
Wait, my soul? My Kia soul?
But you guys also know that I wouldn't be making this video if that's all there was to it. See, the Harvester Devils have one exceptional quality to them, and that is the fact that no mortal can cause harm to a Harvester Devil unless the Harvester Devil attacks them first.
can't touch me.
To put this in game terms, you literally cannot attack or take any aggressive action against a Harvester Devil unless you are either a creature from one of the Outer Planes, or you can pass a DC 25 Wisdom saving throw. And even if you do manage to make that save, you'll be bringing a curse upon yourself that gives you disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws for 24 hours as punishment for breaking cosmic law. This protection that the Harvester Devil enjoys isn't a result of some fiendish magic. It's only possible because of a loophole that Harvester Devils have found a way to leverage in an agreement between all of the gods, which has become known as the Pact Primeval. There's a ton of information to go over about this pact, why it is, what it is, and all of the information surrounding its creation, a lot of which is laid out in the book. But basically, it was agreement that all the gods came to at a very early stage in the multiverse's creation that essentially separated the domain of law into the domains of lawful evil and the domains of lawful good. Basically, it's why hell and heaven are two different places in the D&D canon. So, you can only imagine what this must do for their ego and their sense of security. Harvester Devils are brazen and imperious because they know that nobody can really do anything against them directly. This makes them excellent villains because if you're dealing with a Harvester Devil antagonist, you can't just go straight to the source and chop his head off. You have to get a little creative.
Now remember, the instant you finish it, I own your soul for...
Hey, wait! If I don't finish this last bite, you don't get my soul, do you?
Technically, no.
But before we talk about what kind of schemes a Harvester Devil might get up to using this power, let's talk about all of its abilities and what it can actually do in battle. Combat with a Harvester Devil is bound to be frustrating. This is a creature that cannot be targeted unless you're capable of passing a ludicrously high saving throw. And even then, if you do pass it, you have to make that save every single time you want to attack the devil until you can coax it into attacking you. Come to think of it, abilities like Crown of Madness and other charms that compel someone to attack a creature around them might come in real handy in a situation where you're trying to force a Harvester Devil to make the first move. But barring magical interference, as a CR6 creature, the vast majority of players going up against this thing are not going to be able to succeed on a DC 25 saving throw reliably. So because of this, the Harvester Devil's biggest fear isn't being attacked and killed, it's being captured. While you may not be able to stab it with a sword or shoot it with a gun, if you manage to imprison the devil, that's still fair game. So using a combination of spells like Disguise Self, Dispel Magic, and Misty Step, the Harvester Devil is going to be pretty slippery. And of course, it can also do the one thing most devils are known for doing, and that is summoning more devils. Once per day, the Harvester Devil can summon 2d6 Lemures or 1d4 Bearded Devils. So if things start to get hairy, they're liable to summon some lackeys and hit the bricks. But if the devil does get into a situation where it feels like it has no choice but to attack, it has one trick up its sleeve. Sorry, did I say trick? I meant dagger. It has a dagger up its sleeve that I can stab you with for 1d4 plus 3 damage.
And let me see what you have! No!
And it curses you. If you get stabbed by this infernal creature, you might not take a ton of physical damage, but you do have to make a DC 18 Wisdom saving throw, or your ass is cursed. And if you are cursed, you must spend your next action attacking a target as chosen by the Harvester Devil. So while the damage from its dagger may only be a slight sting, it can use the power of its enemies to cause some real harm. But ultimately, with limited physical attack options and a fairly shallow hit point pool, the Harvester Devil doesn't want to be getting in fights if it doesn't have to. That's what it has minions for. No Harvester Devil is ever just alone. They make it their duty to become very difficult targets and very hard to catch by surprise. They go to great lengths to ensure that they are embedded in society like a tick, as deep as possible. So when you're up against a Harvester Devil, you're not really just fighting the Harvester Devil, you have no idea how many other creatures in the surrounding area might be under that devil's influence.
Bit of advice. Don't threaten the guy who pours the drinks.
Maybe he's promised the local captain of the guard that he can retrieve his deceased son's soul back from the depths of hell if he cooperates. So now, you're not just dealing with the devil, you've got the town guard on your ass. Or perhaps he's convinced the majority of the local merchants guild to sell their souls to him in exchange for vast quantities of wealth, and he uses them as a network of informants. Now, while you're traveling through the city, you have eyes everywhere watching your every move, and that's not even to mention the other devils that a Harvester Devil will have working under them. So based on how long a Harvester Devil has been active in a specific area for, there's really no telling how much danger you're actually putting yourself in when you make yourself openly averse to whatever that Harvester Devil is trying to do. If you do decide that you want to make yourself an enemy of this creature, usually it'll start with the devil approaching you and making you some kind of offer in hopes you won't be able to refuse, and once you've refused that offer, then we see how things go. But I guess that brings us to our next topic, how we might actually use these things at the game table. This monster is great because it can fit in with practically any level of an ongoing campaign. Due to the nature of this monster and everything we just talked about, it's almost never going to be a physical threat. The true challenge here is going to be outthinking and outmaneuvering such a clever creature. If you're a dungeon master running this monster, one of the key things you'll want to consider is what role is the Harvester Devil currently fulfilling within the society it's invaded. Perhaps it's the shady advisor to the king. Or perhaps it's merely a shadowy salesman that appears in his stagecoach at the local crossroads every night, promising a solution to whatever ails you. But whatever level of influence the Harvester Devil has in society, if it's at odds with the party, things are bound to get complicated very fast. The adventurers may have to dismantle this devil's network of people beholden to him, essentially just cutting off all of its resources so that the threat becomes moot. Maybe they go on a quest to find a celestial who's willing to help them. Because remember, mortals can't attack the Harvester Devil. But if they manage to find a powerful celestial who's willing to get on their side, or maybe even a fey creature or an elemental, just some type of being that is not from the material plane that they can get on their side, now they have a way to actually kill it. Every single one of these different avenues has its own challenges. Just contacting a celestial, let alone convincing them that this Harvester Devil is a big enough problem for them to come to the material plane and help them deal with it, is going to be a challenge in and of itself. But maybe they decide to go for a fey creature. Just dealing with fey in general is a challenge in and of itself. You'd have better luck convincing Jeff Bezos not to be a greedy nightmare person. I also love this as a plan B to an adventure, like maybe the party tries to stop a Harvester Devil and they just keep hitting brick wall after brick wall and ultimately decide, screw it, we're gonna go try to find someone else to help us deal with this. The Harvester Devil goading them and laughing at them as they walk away, only for them to show up a month later with like a fucking angel who just walks in and says, "Heard you were talking shit." At that point, the climax of this adventure is just the party rolling in and dealing with the other devils and underlings while their new best friend comes in and just stomps this dude into the dirt. I think that would just be funny and have a lot of great opportunities for roleplay. I do also like the Harvester Devil as an option for helping the party, with heavy air quotes there. In exchange for someone's immortal soul, perhaps the party can strike a deal and get something that they really need. This could be a physical object related to the story, a powerful magic item, or something emotional even, like the resurrection of a fallen party member. Whatever the case, the Harvester Devil could make for a really interesting NPC just to interact with the party if they're desperate enough. I love the idea of a less than moral character dying in a campaign, a character who's riding the line between neutrality and evil, and maybe their soul ends up in the Nine Hells, and after they die, a Harvester Devil then suddenly appears and approaches the party and tries to convince the paladin or the cleric to trade their soul in exchange for the resurrection of their friend. See, there's this whole thing in the D&D cosmology where different souls have different values to different people. A soul that belonged to a cutthroat or a murderer ending up in the Nine Hells, that's just kind of like your average soul. It makes sense, they're supposed to be there. But a soul that belonged to a virtuous paladin or cleric, or just any good aligned character really, has a lot more value in the Nine Hells because it's an exceptional soul. It's not really supposed to be there, and it probably is beholden to one of the good aligned gods, so it just adds this extra value as far as the devils are concerned. So a Harvester Devil would consider it a huge win if they can convince a virtuous character to trade their soul in exchange for the soul and life of their friend who just died. Something else I think is really interesting is that Harvester Devils in the Nine Hells will sometimes act as legal counsel. If you die, and your soul is under the ownership of a devil in the Nine Hells, once you arrive there, you're pretty much screwed. Unless you can convince a judge that the terms of your Faustian contract were somehow invalid. Usually you do this by convincing the judge that the devil's end of the bargain was not upheld. Maybe you were promised 1,000,000 gold and you only received 800,000 gold. Or in some cases, you can also get away with this by convincing the judge that you were forced to sign the contract under duress. This devil said, if you don't sign this, I'm gonna kill you. And that also invalidates the concept of an infernal contract. Whether it's actually true or not, if you demand a trial, you are entitled to stand before a pit fiend judge who will determine the validity of your claim. As the defendant, you can choose to have anyone you want represent you, but if you don't have legal counsel of your own present in the Nine Hells, you will be assigned a Harvester Devil to act as your attorney. This might seem like kind of a raw deal at first, because of course this random devil is going to side with all of the other devils, but something to keep in mind is that devils are lawful creatures, and they also often really hate each other. Living and working in the Nine Hells is an incredibly toxic work environment filled with backstabbing, rivalries, and basically everyone clawing their way to the top of a giant pyramid scheme. So your assigned lawyer is going to do the absolute best they can to defend you, and knowing what we know about Harvester Devils and legal loopholes, you couldn't really ask for better representation. Basically what I'm saying is if you ever wanted to play Phoenix Wright in Hell as a tabletop role-playing game, now you can. But no matter what you choose to do with this creature, in the description down below you will find a Google document which contains all the information that you need to run this creature in 5th edition D&D. And of course over on the Dungeon Dad Patreon page you'll be able to find the Patreon exclusive stat block which contains all the same information but it's laid out in a fancy schmancy PDF format. But that's not all. You may have noticed this already, but there's some unique artwork on this PDF stat block that is not present in any of the D&D books. One of my biggest gripes about making these monster stat blocks in the past has been that finding monster artwork is sometimes really challenging. A lot of it comes from sources that are low resolution, so when you put them on a big fancy stat block in high resolution, they look bad, or sometimes there just isn't monster artwork, or the monster artwork that exists is from that era of D&D where, you know, it was AD&D, it was new. Some of the old artwork is just a little rough is all I'm saying. And in some cases, there just isn't any artwork at all. But thanks to the support from all you lovely patrons out there, going forward, I'm going to be having original artwork commissioned of every monster that I talk about on this show. So every new Patreon stat block is going to have brand new artwork attached to it. This is so exciting for a bunch of different reasons. It's giving me a chance to work with some really talented artists across the community, and it's just so awesome to see brand new life breathed into some of these old creatures. This week's artwork for the Harvester Devil was done by the extremely talented Tam. I'll drop a link to their Twitter page down in the description below. Definitely show them some love, guys, because they're super talented. Anyways, that aside, it is time for Patron of the Week. This week's randomly selected patron is Nameless Cultist. Thank you so much for the support. I expect the blood sacrifice by dawn. And thank you for watching. I appreciate it immensely. And as always, if there is a monster from an older edition of D&D that you would like to see show up on an episode of Monster of the Week, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know in the monster suggestion channel on our Discord. And who knows, you might just see it show up on an episode in the future. Also, you may have noticed this lovely shirt I'm wearing. The Dungeon Dad merch store is now open. We've got all kinds of stuff in stock, including a bunch of generic Dungeon Dad branded merch, but also this lovely D&D's Nuts shirt. So head over to the link in the description and check that out as well. Thank you all so much for your support, whether it's Patreon, buying merch, or just watching these videos. I appreciate you being here. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Until then.
Dungeon Dad revisits a classic from the before times. A massive crow with multiple brains that share a single body. Look at all those shiny magic trinkets. Maybe being bird-brained isn't so bad after all. Next episode, Chrono Tyran. Tune in next time for lots more fan service.